Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3Iron and welcome to today's discussion where we're going to be chatting about the league meta for the ongoing 320 Forbidden Sanctum League and doing some comparisons about where the league has been and where the league is at presently. I am very excited for this discussion today because we've got some good questions and some good answers, and I have been laughing with glee because I found some new ways, some creative ways to answer some questions that a lot of players have had regarding player count in leagues and player retention. So we'll get more into that. Anyway, here's the 4 questions that we had for this particular data set. First off, will the Ascendancy meta resemble something similar to opening weekend from Sanctum League? Second, will the skill gem meta resemble something similar to opening weekend? Third, what style of PoE is more popular based on ladder player count? And this is one where I had some assumptions about the way how player count would take shape, and I was completely wrong about how that player count does take shape and what style of Path of Exile is most popular. The 4th question that I wanted to ask was, what is the ladder player count of the ongoing 320 Forbidden Sanctum League versus the previous 319 Lake of Kalandra patch? That data is going to be very, very helpful for us, as oftentimes when we're talking about player retention and player count in Path of Exile, players get into all sorts of nuanced discussions, which I appreciate nuanced discussions, but oftentimes we nuance the discussion to death and essentially come away saying, well, none of these numbers matter because we don't have all of the numbers to be able to make a comparison or to be able to make a definitive statement. But because we're going to be comparing numbers of the ladder from previous patches versus the current ongoing ladder at a similar stage in time, we finally have some data that actually has some teeth or some solidity to it to be able to discuss. We can still nuance the discussion heavily, but hopefully we won't nuance the discussion to death as we look at these numbers and compare. Itty bitty teeny a balding bearded iron here to take a look at 8 different styles of playing Path of Exile. First off, we've got the top 4 represented here, non-ruthless modes of playing Path of Exile. You've got Sanctum Softcore, Sanctum Hardcore, Sanctum Solo Self-Found, and Sanctum Hardcore Solo Self-Found. In Softcore, the Occultist, Deadeye, Elementalist, Ascendant, and Saboteur come in the top 5 spots. In Hardcore, you've got the Juggernaut, the Champion, the Necromancer, the Occultist, and the Saboteur coming in at the top 5 spots. In Sanctum Solo Self-Found, you've got the Juggernaut, the Saboteur, the Elementalist, the Occultist, and the Champion coming in at the top 5 spots. And in Hardcore Solo Self-Found, you've got the Juggernaut, the Champion, the Saboteur, the Trickster, and the Occultist coming in at the top 5 spots. This is somewhat shocking to me because it has been years since the Juggernaut has held a rather steady popularity percentage across the board in all forms of playing Path of Exile. While Juggernaut has always been a relatively reliable and popular Ascendancy choice for hardcore Path of Exile, to see the Juggernaut take the 6th spot in softcore and the number 1 spots in hardcore or in solo self-found is a very interesting spot in the meta indeed. One note here for all of you fellow minions and summoner fans like myself, it does appear that the Necromancer has taken a serious hit since the last league where I played and followed Path of Exile seriously, and that hit seems to mostly be around the change to Unnatural Strength, which now just doesn't compare. It pales in comparison to what it used to be. Imagine if you could just have +2 levels onto all of your minion gems. It would be amazing. And this is with there still being a relatively popular build archetype for the Necromancer this league, with the Poison SRS combo that's available out there. Lots of different people have done build guides and featured it, and we've even featured it in a build guide comparison video right here on our channel. Who knows, maybe in 321 this will mean that they'll buff the Necromancer? Please? Please? Maybe? Probably not. It'll probably get nerfed again in some way. Moving from regular Path of Exile over to Ruthless mode, where especially masochistic and people who enjoy making things as difficult as possible, like yours truly, are hanging out and playing. In Ruthless Sanctum Softcore, the top 5 spots are Occultist, Necromancer, Juggernaut, Elementalist, and Hierophant. In Ruthless Sanctum Hardcore, you've got the Juggernaut, the Occultist, the Necromancer, the Hierophant, and the Champion. In Solo Self-Found, you've got the Occultist, the Juggernaut, the Necromancer, the Elementalist, and the Raider taking up the top 5 spots. And then in Ruthless Sanctum Hardcore Solo Self-Found, where yours truly has been playing and balding by the day, for the entire league, we've got the Juggernaut coming in at the top spot with the Necromancer, Occultist, Hierophant, and Raider rounding out the top 5 spots. I'm going to do a separate video discussion on this in the future because I'm playing one character from each base class and just pushing them essentially to kill Act 10 Katava. But for me, so far, while I've been leveling in Hardcore Solo Self-Found Ruthless, the #1 easiest build that has been by far the most consistent and the most reliable for both damage and for survivability has actually been playing as a hero font and going cold dot as a hero font rather than going cold dot with the traditional methods of either trickster or occultist. Anyway, more on that later. We'll do a full feature video discussion just on each of those characters that I've played through in Ruthless later on down the line. Enough about ascendancies, let's talk about skill gems. In Sanctum Softcore, the most popular skill gems 1 month into the league are Spark, Righteous Fire, Fire Trap, which is generally used in conjunction with Righteous Fire, Tornado Shot, Ice Spear, Venom Gyre, and Cyclone. Over in Sanctum Hardcore, we've got Explosive Arrow coming in at the top spot with Righteous Fire, Summon Raging Spirits, Bone Shatter, and Seismic Trap, and Fire Trap, and Vortex coming into the top spots. In Solo Self-Found, you've got Seismic Trap coming in at 12% of the league, which it's interesting to note that out of all of the different leagues, this is the single highest percentage share of the ladder experienced players. Second spot comes in with Explosive Arrow at 11%, then Righteous Fire, then Summon Raging Spirits, Vortex, and Toxic Rain. Then over in Sanctum Hardcore Solo Self-Found, we've got Bone Shatter, Explosive Arrow, Seismic Trap, Summon Raging Spirits, Righteous Fire, and Toxic Rain, and Vortex. So this is the 1 month into the league snapshot. Let's do some comparison versus 1 month into the league versus opening weekend. In Softcore Sanctum, over the course of opening weekend, Seismic Trap, Explosive Arrow, Righteous Fire, Venom Gyre, Vortex, and Spark were coming in the top spots during the opening weekend for league starters. Spark has remained a top-tier pick along with Righteous Fire and Fire Trap, but then we've seen things like Tornado Shot and Ice Spear take up some more of those spots in the top most desirable and popular skills on the ladder. It's also interesting to note that while Poisonous Concoction is something that's often used by players for league starters, once players can transition off of Poisonous Concoction, they pretty much do so, and they'll switch into other builds that are going to scale better into the late game. In Hardcore, during the opening weekend, Seismic Trap, Explosive Arrow, Righteous Fire, Exsanguinate, and Bone Shatter, Vortex, and Summon Raging Spirit all came in at relatively popular spots, whereas now 1 month into Sanctum, Explosive Arrow and Righteous Fire and SRS have definitely taken up the top spots and emerged as the most popular skills, with Bone Shatter, Seismic Trap, Fire Trap, and Vortex and Toxic Rain reigning out the rest. In Solo Self-Found, where things are a little bit more difficult and you've got to farm things on your own, farm items for yourselves, you don't have the ease of trading for items. On opening weekend, Seismic Trap came in with a whopping 10% of the league playing it. The second most popular skill was Explosive Arrow at 6%, then Righteous Fire, Toxic Rain, Exsanguinate, and Poisonous Concoction, with Vortex and Bone Shatter rounding out those top percentages. 1 month into the league in SSF, we've got Seismic Trap still taking up that top spot. It's actually grown in popularity as the league has gone on and as the ladder has progressed, along with Explosive Arrow, Righteous Fire, and Summoning Raging Spirits. Vortex, Toxic Rain, Fire Trap, and Bone Shatter remain and round out the last bits of what is most popular. In Hardcore Solo Self-Found, Seismic Trap, Bone Shatter, Explosive Arrow, Toxic Rain, and Vortex rounded out the top couple of spots during opening weekend, whereas now 1 month into the league, Bone Shatter has taken over in the top spot and has become dominant and meta in Hardcore Solo Self-Found, along with Explosive Arrow, Seismic Trap, Summon Raging Spirits, Righteous Fire, Toxic Rain, and Vortex. Enough about regular Path of Exile. Let's talk a little bit more about that famous masochistic hard mode, Ruthless mode, and let's take a look at how players are shaping up with the limited amount of skill gem choices that they've got. For those of you who know nothing about Ruthless Path of Exile, other than it's the fabled hard mode, essentially one of the things that makes it so difficult is that support gems are drop only. That's right, you don't get support gems from either quest recipes or quest rewards, you don't get them from vendor recipes or vendor trading, you don't get them from Ciosa in Act 3. Support gems and most auras are only available as drop only abilities. The exception to that are Precision, Clarity, and Vitality. Those are auras that are available to you in Act 1 as quest rewards. So one thing that's different about looking at popular skill gem choices in Ruthless versus in regular Path of Exile is that we're no longer going to look at 5+ linked skills because a lot of players don't have 5 or 6 links in Ruthless mode. So in that regard, the data needs to be observed in a little bit different ways. You're going to see some trends here across the board because of those aforementioned auras that are available, like Precision, Vitality, and Clarity, but you're also going to see some active skill gems emerge as popular picks regardless of the mode of style of play in Ruthless, whether or not trade is involved and whether or not character death means permadeath or not. So in softcore Ruthless, Vitality, Clarity, Summon Stone Golem, and Precision all come in as the top spots. No shock there, as those are all wonderful utility auras that are reliably attained. But then from there, we see Molten Shell, Flammability, Frost Bomb, Raise Zombie, Frostbite, Vortex, Cold Snap, Raise Spectre, and Blood Rage coming in popular spots ranging between 13% of the league using it up to 18% of the league using it. In hardcore Ruthless, we've got Vitality, Clarity, Summon Stone Golem, Molten Shell, Precision, and then Raise Zombie, Flammability, Ancestral Protector, Summon Raging Spirits, Decoy Totem, Frostbomb, Cold Snap, and Desecrate. In solo self-found Ruthless, we've got Vitality, Clarity, Summon Stone Golem, Precision, along with Molten Shell, Flammability, Frostbomb, Cold Snap, Raise Zombie, Frostbite, Vortex, Summon Raging Spirit, and Ancestral Protector. Over in hardcore solo self-found Ruthless, where your bearded, balded friend has been playing, we've got Vitality, Clarity, Summon Stone Golem, Molten Shell, Precision, Raise Zombie, Ancestral Protector, Flammability, Summon Raging Spirit, Frostbomb, Holy Flame Totem, Raise Spectre, and Cold Snap. Shout out to Holy Flame Totem. It has been very, very helpful to use on multiple characters, and the consecrated ground effect that it drops down can be very helpful for somewhat otherwise tough fights. Yes, I'm about to name a very tough fight in hardcore solo self-found Ruthless, which is in Act 2, and it's the Weaver. Those of you who have lost characters to the Weaver, hi, I have too. We've all done it. It's okay. Enough about skill gems. Let's go take a look at the thing that I was most excited and most shocked to find out about, which was player counts in each of these various forms of playing Path of Exile and comparing those player counts to previous leagues. So playing regular Path of Exile in Sanctum Softcore, the latter has populated 14,000 characters, or more than 14,000 characters. Over in Hardcore Sanctum, there's over 9,000 characters, just under 200 under 10,000 characters on the ladder. In Solo Self-Found Sanctum, Softcore, there's 13,000, almost 14,000 characters playing. And in Hardcore Solo Self-Found Sanctum, there's just under 8,000 characters, a little above 7,700 characters showing up on the ladder. This was shocking to me for a couple of reasons. I thought surely that regular hardcore trade Path of Exile would come in as a higher player count than solo self-found trade in softcore. While I know there's plenty of players who don't like losing their character and are averse to playing hardcore, I thought there would be more players who were averse to playing in a solo self-found environment, and I was simply wrong about that. It was very interesting to see those numbers for this particular league. Again, maybe some of that is just the aversion to losing a character and being able to progress in general. But it was interesting to see just how similar the player counts for the ladders were between both softcore trade and softcore solo self-found. I did not expect those numbers to be so close. For the ladder count, we're talking only a difference of about 600 players. Now, there is something to note here in the level of experience that is being pulled on these players. You can note in Sanctum Softcore League, these are all players who have dinged level 100. Over 14,000 players that have dinged level 100. Whereas in Hardcore Sanctum, this range is going to be for characters from level 79 up through 100. So it's not all level 100 characters. The same thing is true over in Solo Self-Found Softcore. The experience range is going to range between level 91 to level 100. And in Hardcore Solo Self-Found, the range is even larger, ranging from level 78 all the way up to level 100. There's even further rabbit trails to go down into this. If you'd like to, I encourage you, you can go over to POE.ninja, which is where we pull all of our numbers from when we're observing the ladder and when we're making these meta observations. You can simply check it so that way all of your search data is only going to pull up the level 100s. It's interesting to compare the level 100s in each of their respective formats of playing Path of Exile. Of course, you're not going to find any level 100 Ruthless players because it's an absolute slog, and I think the top spot right now is a level 95 Bone Shatterer player that's over in Ruthless. Experience and the experience penalties in Ruthless are simply enormous. All right, this is where I got really excited to be able to compare current ongoing 320 Forbidden Sanctum numbers versus previous Lake of Kalandra 319 numbers. This is the part of the discussion where oftentimes when we're talking about player retention, player peak numbers on Steam, and how many players are actually playing Path of Exile, where players are always adding in several different layers of nuance and layers of disclaimers like, well, the numbers don't represent all the players playing on PlayStation or Xbox. The numbers don't represent all the players that are playing on the standalone client on PC. The numbers don't truly represent the player retention because we don't know whether or not player retention is actually higher on one of these platforms than on another. And those are all fine nuances to take into account when we are trying to get a holistic total summary count of the number of players who play Path of Exile. We simply don't have access to that information. Grinding Gear Games does, but they're not going to release that. Gaming companies rarely release any information about their player bases, and some of that is for legal reasons, other of that is just for good business savvy reasons. So, enough about talking about all the things that we can't do. Here's what we can do. We can compare ladder numbers at this particular point in the league to ladder numbers at a previous point in a previous league. That gives us some level of data that we can actually sink our teeth into and make some comparisons. So, where are we at today in Forbidden Sanctum? Well, in Forbidden Sanctum, on the ladder, we've got 14,305 characters who have dinged level 100 and who are on the ladder, as it were. At the same point in time, 1 month in, or roughly at the 5-week mark, that's roughly where we're at for Sanctum, and roughly at the same time in Kalandra, this is where Kalandra was at 13,120 characters. That is more than 1,000 characters less, more than 1,000 players less who had populated the ladder. And you'll also note that the experience on the players of the ladder in Lake of Kalandra is level 99 to level 100. In other words, more players during Sanctum have pushed for level 100 than at the same point in time pushed for level 100 during Lake of Kalandra. And that number is somewhat of a significant number. It's about 1,200 characters fewer in Lake of Kalandra than currently in Sanctum. Does this mean the total player count is higher or the total player count is different? No, but what it does mean is that the ladder player count is significantly different. The data shows that there are more players populating a higher percentage and a higher portion of the ladder over in Forbidden Sanctum League, the current ongoing league, than in the previous league, 319 Kalandra. Comparing Hardcore Sanctum to Hardcore Kalandra, we've got 9,846 characters currently occupying the ladder spots as populated over on POE.ninja, ranging in level from level 79 to level 100. The experience is the same when we look back at 319, level 79 through level 100, but there we find 7,514 characters populating the ladder. That's more than 2,300 characters fewer playing during Lake of Kalandra 319 than currently playing during Sanctum. In solo self-found Sanctum, we've got a level range of level 91 through level 100, and we've got 13,793 characters populating that ladder. Compare that to 319 Kalandra, and in solo self-found, there were 13,492 characters playing, and the level range experience was 89 to 100. The difference here is only a couple hundred characters, but those couple hundred characters seem to have pushed the ladder up in experience from level 89 in Kalandra to level 91. Again, a relatively significant margin. In Hardcore Solo Self-Found Sanctum, there are 7,718 characters populating the ladder, making up for an experience base of 78 to level 100. Over in Kalandra, comparing to the 319 League, there were 7,534 characters populating the ladder, ranging in experience from level 76 to level 100. You add all those numbers up, it means that there's more than 4,000 more players playing on ladders and being tracked on the ladders during regular Path of Exile in 320 Sanctum than during the 319 Lake of Kalandra League. As though I was a bearded and balding version of Billy Mays, but wait, there's more to this data as we compare player count. During Lake of Kalandra League, we did not have Ruthless, which means there's a whole other ladder and a whole other set of data for us to compare that is actually pulling potentially players away from those other ladders. Now again, we can nuance this discussion to death and we can say, well, maybe there are players who are playing on ladder and being recorded for Ruthless, and there are also players who are also simultaneously playing regular Path of Exile and taking up ladder spots there. So maybe one ladder spot in one style of Path of Exile doesn't truly equate to one player. That same level of nuance can be applied to each of the different forms of Path of Exile currently ongoing as well. For instance, a player could reach level 100 in softcore, then go do the same thing in hardcore, then go reach a ladder spot in solo self-found, and another spot in solo self-found hardcore. So one player doesn't necessarily equal one player over there in regular Path of Exile anyway. So So maybe really we shouldn't be using the term players at all. Maybe we should just be talking about characters, but even still, there's more characters playing during Sanctum League than there were during Lake of Kalandra. When you add Ruthless numbers on top of it, it's either better for the game overall in terms of retention, because players are then swapping between normal, regular Path of Exile and Ruthless, or it might mean that there's players who are playing Ruthless mode who are not playing regular Path of Exile, who would not be playing and reaching ladder heights during regular Path of Exile at the moment anyway. We can further nuance this discussion and potentially kill whatever joy and enthusiasm we have in this by saying even further, no, maybe the players who are playing Ruthless would otherwise be one-to-one correlating and populating the ladders for Sanctum. But nonetheless, that still means there's more players who are playing in Sanctum than were playing during Kalandra if all of these players who are playing Ruthless would have also populated the ladder during Sanctum League. I think in general, what we can say is with the presence of Ruthless and all the different ways to play Path of Exile, there are certainly more players engaging with and playing longer during the 320 Sanctum League than previously during the 319 Lake of Kalandra League. I don't think we have the data to be able to look back and say this is more than ever before, but it's certainly more than what we experienced during the previous league. So, what are the raw numbers of Ruthless? Is Ruthless this super tiny niche thing that only like 2 people, me and Chris, enjoy? Is that really what it is? No, in fact, the numbers show us it's much larger than that. Ruthless Softcore Trade has got 6,939 characters populating the ladder. Now, the ladder over there ranges from level 35 up to level 94. So, it is much less impressive in that regard than in the regular mode of Path of Exile where everybody's hit level 100, but nonetheless, there's just under 7,000 players populating the ladder over in Ruthless Sanctum Trade League. In Hardcore Ruthless Trade, there's 2,145 characters occupying the ladder. The ladder over there is from level 6 to level 93. So I need to say this to you loud and clear. If you've never made the ladder before and you want to make the ladder, well, you only have to ding level 7 over there in Ruthless Trade League. So I invite you to do so. No, I don't invite. I challenge you to do so. See if you can go take down Brutus and get to level 7 on the climb. Watch out for Kaduku. He does some serious damage. Over in Solo Self-Found Ruthless, we've got over 4,470 characters that are playing with a level experience ranging from level 9 all the way up to level 95. And then over in Hardcore Solo Self-Found Ruthless, where yours truly is playing, we've got 3,387 characters. That's a decent chunk of players that are playing across the board in Ruthless. When we combine all these numbers, what's the total? Above my slightly balding forehead, there's 16,948 players who are occupying the ladder in Ruthless in all of its various forms. I don't know if you as a member of the Path of Exile community consider that to be a success or not, but me as somebody who's enjoying Ruthless, I'm happy to see these numbers, and I hope that we will be able to compare these numbers during the 321 cycle to see that there's even more players who are enjoying overall Path of Exile, both in the regular form of Path of Exile and in all of the various expressions of Ruthless. Well, thanks so much for joining us for today's discussion. I appreciate you sticking around and dropping comments, leaving whatever nuance or adding whatever nuance to the discussion that you'd like to add. If there's any mistakes that I've made, I invite you to point those out. And I always love to hear if you're enjoying these particular discussions, because that lets me know whether or not you want more discussions like this going on in the future. For discussion questions today, I've got a couple of them. First off, what stood out to you about how the meta has changed or remained unchanged during the 320 Forbidden Sanctum League? Second question, would you say overall that the meta has indeed significantly shifted, or would you say it's remained mostly the same since 319? Why do you think it's shifted, or why do you think it's stayed the same? Let me know down below with your thoughts in the comment. Thanks once again for joining us for today's discussion, and I hope that today is the day a Mirror of Kalandra drops for you if you're playing regular Path of Exile, or maybe if you're playing Ruthless, I just hope a support gem actually drops for you that you can use. Thanks once again for joining us. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.